Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Anna Clements, and this is Audiobooks with Anna, where we explore the fascinating world of audiobooks with industry experts. Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Welcome everybody to Audiobooks on Clubhouse. Today we are hoping to sit and have a chat with ErinMoon, who is wonderfully in the audience. Thank you very much for joining us here. And thank you to everybody in the audience for lots of the hellos in the chat. Welcome, everybody. Erin, hello and welcome. Hi.
Hello. I'm always so nervous about the entry point. I'm like, am I going to get there? Is it going to open? Am I on the right page?
It's always,
Thank you for having
You're
me.
very welcome. It's always an adventure because we're never very sure. Some of the rooms, they start them like 5 minutes early and then
Yeah.
they make people wait with music and things. And I can't get my head around the music, to be perfectly honest. So
Yeah.
I'm a start at the top of the hour kind of girl.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm always,
Thank you
it's like
so much.
my whole nervous system is always like, okay, is it going to happen? Am I going to miss it? Am I an utter Luddite? Yes, I am, but I can do this.
Zoom has the same effect on me. When I go on Zoom and it says the host knows you're here, I'm like, yeah, but do
Yeah.
they? Do they really? Are they aware? Are they sure?
I'm glad I'm not alone. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so happy we
And
get to talk, Anna.
me too, me too. And we may as well get started. Erin, tell us a story about Erin before. Where did it all start and how did you get here?
So I've always wanted to be an actor. I'm one of those people who kind of, for whatever reason, really early on had an idea that that's what I wanted to do. And the best I can trace it back to is I think I saw Shirley Temple and I saw Annie when I was at a really informative age, and that was it for me. Like, that was it. I was like, I want to do that. I want to be the little redheaded girl in that little red dress, dancing. I want to dance up and down stairs. That's what I want to do. And so that's how and it was kind of that. And for a while, it was either an actor or a marine biologist.
Oh, love that.
Because what kid doesn't love manatees and dolphins? And so that was kind of the pursuit. And like I did the different classes, that your parents might have put you in. And I don't come from a lot of money. I come from small town and farm folk. And so we were allowed to do two things, and one had to be piano, and then the other could be something else. So I would often pick something like, I'd do an acting class in the summer, or I would do gymnastics, or I would do a dance class. And then eventually that became choir, and then always part of band and drama at school. And it was always with the idea in mind. And even my elementary school teachers knew Erin wants to be an actor. And so I still kind of did a bunch of different little things, but that was always what I was going to go to school for, and so I did.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So talk us through it. Take us to school with you.
Okay. So I graduated high school, and I knew I wanted to be an actor, and there was kind of two tracks I could take. There was a couple conservatory programs. I grew up in Canada, so that's one thing. So there was a couple conservatory programs that were kind of considered the top two in the country, and one gave a degree and the other didn't, and one had an academic prerequisite where I would have to do a very high load of an academic year at a university or 2 years of college before I could audition and go in, and the other didn't, and it didn't kind of have an academic outcome, but both were kind of highly thought of. So I auditioned for both, and the first year out of school, I actually worked at a theater company doing everything but acting because I wanted a year off, but I still wanted to have my fingers in the pot. So I did that. And then I went to college for 2 years in a theater studies program and started doing summer theater. And then I got into one of the two conservatory programs. Luckily, I'm happy that I got into the one that I got a degree out of. And I did that. And there was 12 of us in my class for the 3 years. And it was one of those acting schools where you show up at school at 8:30 in the morning and you end up being there until 10:30 at night, 6 days a week. And that was heaven for me. That was everything I'd always wanted.
Wonderful.
Ooh, sorry.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
something so wonderful
Yeah.
about that kind of immersion into
Yeah.
the love that you have for something.
Yeah, and I felt like it was the gold, I always called it the golden gates because of school, where within those golden gates you were safe. You were able to be wrong and you were able to be bad. And you were able to grow because there was all of this support structure around you, which was so great. Um,
I love that idea of permission to fail. That's
yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, and it's something I still encourage with when I work with actors because I feel, and I'll say it, if I teach group classes particularly, I'm like, this is the place. This is the place to not have to feel like you have to be great because I'm just here and I'm here to bring you forward as far forward as you're going to go at this point in your life, whether you do this or don't do this as a career or a side gig or otherwise, is besides your personal growth. And that's what I feel is really so fundamental in acting and what I learned. I feel like in the program I went to, on top of lots of different skills, was that it is really 100% about growth, and my personal growth is my acting is only going to be as good as my personal growth,
Do you know,
really.
I cannot tell you how very warm you are making me feel inside, and I may have to ask everybody to leave so that I can book a session with you right now because that is
Right
everything
back
we
at you.
talk about here. It's wonderful. That really is everything we talk about. So I'm thrilled to
Yeah.
hear that. Tell me then, before we get on to your coaching and how, I must just tell you that so many people, when I said last week that I was having you on this week, wrote in the chat, I cannot speak highly enough of her.
Hmm.
So you are incredibly well thought of. I should really have
Oh,
said that right at the top of the hour, but so
thank you.
thank you again for being
And
here.
thanks to all who said that. And I feel right back because I feel
Lovely.
like everybody who comes in to do any sort of this work is really, you're opening your heart and your soul. And that is a privilege to hold space for. And yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Yes, yes. Tell us then, so you've graduated
Yep.
college?
Hmm. And
Keep going.
yeah, so in between my years, I did summer theater, as many people do. In college, that summer theater was historical theater at a historical park. So we would basically do a story every kind of half an hour to 45 minutes. We'd do a little play, like a little skit throughout the day, kind of bringing the guests forward through the history of that time of the park, including me starting the day packing a donkey while giving a monologue dressed as a boy. So I played my first pants role that way. And that was a blast, and singing and all sorts of things and making ice cream with the kids. And it was just the perfect summer stock experience. And then when I got into the conservatory program, the last 2 years I was there, I went down to Colorado Shakespeare Festival, and that was the first summer. It was really interesting because it was between my second and third year of a 3-year conservatory program. And that year was the first year because we hadn't done accents yet in our training. That was kind of where we were going to deep dive into in our third year to prepare us for getting out into the world. And um, I remember getting notes from one of the rehearsals, and they were like, "Hey, Erin, can you not say bean? It's just very British." And I was like, how would you say that word, BEEN?" And it's because it's Colorado Shakespeare Festival, and I hadn't learned yet what a general American accent was. And we say bean all the time in Canada. We say bin as well, but we also say bean, and it depends on the vowel sounds that are kind of around it. And I remember them looking at me like, bin or Ben. And I was like, okay, I didn't know I said that different. And that was it was good learning. And then when I did that same Shakespeare festival the year after I graduated, and I met a boy and fell in love. And our only option for me being able to, or us being able to stay together after that summer, was basically I had to be a superstar, which I most definitely was not, a nurse or a doctor, or invest like $1 million in the American economy, and or a business in America, and so, or get married. So we just kind of went, so we're just gonna like get married then, right? after knowing
Wow.
each other for 3 months. 3 months. Just crazy. And it was definitely, we were vying for the relationship, and we knew we were vying for the relationship. And so at that point, it was about getting all the paperwork in order and kind of buying time, because a fiancé visa gives you 3 months in which you have to get married once you get approved for the fiancé visa. And then after that is when, once you're married and are applying for an adjustment of status, and then a green card, is when I can work. So we actually got the fiancé visa on the 14th of February 2002, which was
Oh,
adorable. Yeah, just two little kids. He was 25, turning 26. I just turned 24, I think. And so that's what brought me to New York. And so we were in New York, and that's where my acting career. I mean, I came back to Canada and did a couple of shows because I'd made so many connections up here. But for the most part, then it was living in New York and working all of the survival jobs, and yeah, auditioning for shows, mostly theater. Theater was really the main focus of my acting career, and that the survival job went from the typical waitressing into temping, and then into doing post production and directing at Recorded Books. Strangely enough.
wow.
Hmm.
That's quite a jump.
Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah, and I learned very quickly about my general American accent
Yes.
as I was in the U.S. auditioning. Yeah, and very quickly, and I only spoke, and even now it's funny. My friends, I've moved back to Canada in the last 9 years, and even now, mostly because I speak mostly in a general American accent, but it is my go-to now. Once in a while I'll hear a Canadian pronunciation of a certain word, because it's very, very specific on a few words with between Canada and America, especially in the modern age. But every once in a while, a Canadian word will sneak in, and I'm like, oh, I said a Canadian word, because my go-to is American now. Yeah.
Love that. I had no idea that you were Canadian. Not that my ear is particularly well tuned, but I had no
Hmm.
idea. So, huge congratulations on your adeptness. So you're starting at Recorded Books.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, Obviously, a lot has happened since then.
Yeah, it was such a savior to work there, because, when you're in New York City and we were both blue collar kids, so we don't have any family money. He had huge, my late husband, Stafford, had huge student loan debt because he went to undergrad in New York and went to ACT during the dot-commerce time in San Francisco. And I had some student debt too. So you're just like trying to make ends meet, trying to get that job, and you just want to do the thing you love. And so when you're working the survival job that you don't care about and that doesn't feed your soul, it was really hard. It was because all the weight of my artistic happiness was on every audition I did and every gig that I was going to book or not book. And when I started at Recorded Books, even though I wasn't acting, I was in literature, I was in story, I was working with actors, I was working with musicians and actors and people who knew literature. Like, one of the women ended up teaching at Brown in the English department. So we had this, our water cooler talk was fantastic. And so because of that, as soon as I started working at Recorded Books as my, quote unquote survival job, I ended up booking more gigs in theater because I was happier. I was fulfilled. I felt useful. I felt like my skill set as a human being was being used. I was working with, and I made all my friends, I made so many friends, like Dion. I've known Dion and Robin and Therese and like just like Carol, God, Carol, for 20 years now because of working there, and their colleagues. And so Claudia loved having actors work in post production and directing because we knew what we knew and knew how to work with actors. And then I very slowly got up the guts to be like, "Hey Claudia, here's a demo that I, stayed after work in one of the studios to make." And she had actually just seen me in an off-Broadway show that was very successful. And she said, "Oh yeah, well we're starting this imprint, this Maple Leaf imprint." And I wanted to see maybe if you would do it, because once we crossed over to narrating that they were probably going to lose us in the other jobs. And truth be told, within 6 months maybe of me narrating my first book for Recorded Books, I was then working at Audible. Gabra Zackman helped introduce me to some folks at Audible, and I could switch over to narrating as my full-time job. And so that was a blessing.
Would you consider, for anybody starting in the industry who's finding the narration side hard, would you say that starting on the production side would be a good call for finding out how the industry works? Are you glad
Yeah.
that's how you came in?
I am so glad, because my reading skills went up astronomically. So I've learned actually just recently that I have deep dyslexia, which one of the kind of therapies for that is read along, listen along. So I didn't know that. I haven't known that my whole life. And that reading along, listening along, my reading skills were always, I could never cold read. Never, ever, ever, for an audition or otherwise. As an actor, I could never cold read. It wasn't, my brain didn't work that fast with language, but my comprehension skills were very, very, very high, and my vocab skills. So all those years of listening along and reading along actually were the therapy that makes me a very fast reader now. And that also gave me the opportunity to essentially go to school for hearing the diversity of ways in which to approach text, when I personally felt it was more successful and less successful, when I got more out of a book and less out of a book, what options were available for character voice, being a femme identifying person and a femme voice identifier. That was also something that I got to notice, like, how does Barbara Rosenblatt do it? And then how does Carol Monda do it? And how does Therese do it? And, how does Robin do it? And I got to really just immerse myself in what is audiobooks. And I got to cut in a lot of retakes and do a lot of post production and recognize how I can help the sound engineers that I work with and the production houses that I work with to make that part of the process more easeful. And that's been very particularly helpful, I think, since, as many narrators who've been in it for a while know, in the last, like, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years, all of our retakes have gone way, 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 way up because of the whisper sync, and because of the oncoming of the use of positron as a tool and things like that. We're getting more retakes, and so being good at it and being very good at matching has been helpful to those I work with, because I have more retakes now, which is kind of great.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
such a team effort, isn't it? The whole process it really
Yeah.
does have a team feel to it now rather
And I
than.
know that team. Like, I've been part of that team, and I feel that team, and I never feel like I'm working in a silo, which is, to me, death as an artist. Art is about being in community. Art is about people and humanity, and so being part of a team is fundamental, I think, to art. Um, and that, so I always know that I'm on a team, and I always know that the interaction that I have with that team is only going to make us, being what I call aunts and uncles to books, the people who ferry the book forward into the world. It already exists, but to bring it forward into the world in another form and in a differently accessible form, that we are serving that piece of art as a collective, that we are together bringing that forward to the best of our ability.
Love
Mhm.
that. Sorry, so keep us going. You are now narrating books full time. I use the term now,
Mhm.
in the past, obviously. At this point, you're narrating books full time. I'm assuming that must have gone on for quite some time. Were you
Yeah.
still able to do live theatre and able to sort of reach out and continue, or did you not need
Yeah.
to bother or want to?
Yeah, I did. I did while I was in New York, for sure. It was kind of, and it was such a nice, easeful thing to be able to kind of go in between. And at that time, there was very, very few people with home studios, so almost nobody. I think Hillary was one of the earliest people. Maybe I think I remember us all talking when, like, I think it was Simon Preble or somebody who made a studio upstate, and we were like, "Ooh, recording at home," because it was pretty much all in studio at the time. I mean, I remember, I remember breaking the backs of actual books and photocopying them as a way to record them in studio. Like, I remember all the paper before we switched over to our iPads and stuff, which is so much better. And so I was able to do theater and kind of pop out of town and then come back and do a book at like JMM or Hachette or Audible or recorded books and just kind of bop around town. And, at that time, most of us were doing, maybe a couple books a month. The only full time narrator, like full time, meaning they were actually contractually full time, was George Guidall. And he was coming into recorded books, 5 days a week. And he had his studio, it was George's studio. And everybody else was doing it pretty freelancy. And, people were doing it regularly, but not not often singularly. Although some people were. And then that kind of went on for a while. And then my husband got sick. He was diagnosed with cancer, and he had actually started narrating as well. And we, luckily, the years before he got sick, we had started working a lot more, a lot closer to New York and in New York and more together. We were being cast more and more in shows together, which was a blessing because we spent a lot of years where we would spend about 6 months apart because of theater. And so when he got sick, that was our, like, again, we're blue collar actors. We do not have savings. We do not have anybody coming to the rescue financially. And so that was, his income was gone, and we weren't on social media. There was no kind of GoFundMe's at that time as well. And so really recording books and the community that I had been a part of for all those years was an utter savior because I couldn't be away from him very often. I was his sole caregiver, and the community came up. I remember Kat Lambrick specifically really made sure that I had as much work as I needed, but also understanding that they would need to work around hospital schedules and things like that. And that was really an incredible thing because we would have had no income without that. And then when he passed, the same community circled up and around me and made sure that I was able to take care of myself and made sure that I was also still working because being able to be in distraction, even though it's the biggest and often most heart-wrenching parts of people's lives that we are narrating, being able to work was very important. And there was no way at that time, I stopped doing theater when he got sick. And when he passed, I knew I couldn't stand up in front of people and share my soul. That was, I didn't even know what my soul looked like anymore. And so really narrating was the thing that got me through those 2 years after he passed, and then me deciding to move back to Canada to be near my sister and to also just extract myself from a city that was holding a lot of trauma for me. And I could bring that work with me. And I remember being so scared that I was going to lose that work because it wasn't really happening in studio in Vancouver at that time. And Mike Charzak said, "Oh, Erin, just build yourself a booth. This is the equipment you need." A few more people are doing that now. We're building out a couple of, self-record studios. Like, that's when things were expanding. The ACX was starting to come online. More home studio opportunities were coming into being. And so they're like, "Yeah, no problem. We'll just hire you like we normally hired you. Off you go." And that was a bomb for my financial soul, but also for my artistic soul. And so for the first 3 years in Vancouver, I also wasn't ready kind of to do theater yet, but I was doing books full time. And so it really, again, was my creative outlet, my healing outlet, and my community was able to come with me during, really hard and intense time. And moving at 38 was hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I must just comment, if anybody, you've written a beautiful blog about the time after, and people can find it. It's on your website. It's available to see. Was writing. Sorry, I want to say two things. That must
Mm.
have been an incredible leap of faith at a time when you're already grieving so much to
Yeah.
worry about, possibly grieving your career.
Yes.
Is it because, for those who don't know, Mike Chazak is the head of Audible. So having him say that must have been a little reassuring, but I still appreciate that must have been a really big leap for you.
Yeah, yeah, it was. And when I first got to town, and especially because I didn't know the myself and the world yet. Like I was still learning who this new me was without all of the dreams of my 11-year relationship with my husband, and being so young and being a widow as well. I just didn't understand kind of what and who I was yet. I was still in a very deep survival mode. And so to have the anchor of the one thing that I'd known my whole life that I was, it was, we often in the theater world will say theater therapy. And although I think there's health in that and unhealthy things in that, I also do think that when you have had an idea of one root of yourself and all the other roots have been pulled up, it's almost like that was the taproot. And that was the thing that if I could continue to be that, and if I continue to serve in that way, and if I could continue to have purpose in that way, then at least I had the taproot. And so it was so scary to do that move, and also to have friends and community and hiring bodies that said, "We got you," was, I mean, that was feeding the taproot,
Wonderful.
essentially. Yeah.
Yes, yes, incredible. So, move us on with your story. I must just thank you because this is incredible, and I'm so pleased to have the opportunity to get to know you because this really feels it all feels like new information when I'm aware that actually it's all available,
Yeah.
publicly, as it were, and yet hearing you tell it is really quite different. So, thank you
Yeah.
for sharing with us. And I must just take a moment because we're already half an hour in to say to anybody in the audience, if you'd like to come up and ask Erin any questions, please do. Please share your thoughts, your ideas. We're going to get on now to Erin today. And
Yeah.
Erin, tell us about then your move into, well, what must have been, I guess, as you moved then to Vancouver,
Hmm.
the shift that must have very naturally, I imagine, occurred over time, sort of very organically, into live producing, acting, and coaching. Talk us
Hmm.
through the journey.
Yeah. So, you did mention about writing, and just I want to just quickly talk about that. Yeah. So writing was it became a very important part of my moving forward, and I have written 280 pages of a memoir that will at some point be done, but it's hard to go back into that. And writing has continued to be a very important part of my processing as a human being, I think. So then, so I've coached like and taught actors since even Colorado Shakes and the acting. I did the acting company and the acting company tour when I was back in New York, and so from elementary school age to college age, I've taught everything from Shakespeare, a lot of Shakespeare, to stage fighting. And then before I left the city, Brickshop Audio was a spin-off of two guys that I worked with, Chris and Rob, at Recorded Books. So they were good friends. And so they spun off in the early days of these smaller kind of boutique audiobook producers. And we did a few, I think with Carol too. I think Carol and I taught one as well. Um, uh, Kind of workshops for narrators, for people who wanted to be narrators. And it was always, at that time, it was always kind of actors, people who were like, what I mean by that, many people are actors, but trained theater actors were a big part of the community, the kind of the most of the community at that point. And so it was people that we knew in the acting community. And I also, before I left New York, I taught at the American Academy of Dramatic Art. I taught neutral mask and movement there. And so I've always kind of had my finger in the education world. And I'm also a trained yoga instructor and now a yoga therapist. And I've taught yoga instructors since 2009. So teaching teachers and teaching kind of at that higher level of education, the kind of progressive level of education, has always been part of me. And what I've learned, I think, in the last maybe decade or so, is that it kind of has a root in my need to nurture. I have a very big need to nurture people. And so a way to do that is also to pass on information. And so when I feel like I really have a good handle on information, where I have learned, truly digested it myself, learned it myself, screwed it up, learned it again, that's when I teach it. And I've always had that. I want to share. I want to share that knowledge. And so that was a kind of natural progression when, from before I even left New York, teaching narrators. And then once I was here, it really was one of those, it came to me. So people were asking that of me, were contacting me through different means to get some of that coaching. And then a voiceover school in Vancouver approached me about maybe creating an audiobooks class, like an intro to audiobooks class. And so I did that for them. And now they have college accredited course as well. That is like a full-time voiceover program that takes, I think, a year, and I'm the audiobooks part of that is one. So like I wrote the syllabus for that and continue to be the faculty lead for that. And so it was kind of, yeah, like a natural progression, and I'd had that university experience as well. So I kind of bounce between these different ways in which to work with people depending on their individual needs.
There are on your website lots of information about the places you've spoken and stuff that you've taught. And if anybody wants to go take a look, I'm aware that I've put Erin's website at the top of the page here. If you pull to refresh, it's the link at the top of the page. But in the chat, I've also put the links to her blog and to her yoga website. Erin, I'm in
Thanks,
awe.
Anna.
Talk us through then your coaching, I guess. Tell us
Yeah.
about. I had such specific questions to ask you, and I haven't managed to get one. So let me start with my favorite, which is off the, out of left field or whatever it's called. What's your favorite emoji?
Oh gosh, what emoji do I use the most? I think if you if you went through, I think the heart. I think I'm a heart person. I'm very heart
I
oriented.
can believe that.
So I think I'm like, yeah, I think the face, the face that's got the hearts around it, and then heart in general, I definitely use. And then of course if I'm using an emoji as Felicity, which is who is my pseudonym, which I'm out about, so all good. Felicity Monroe uses a lot of fire because she's that part of my personality.
Love that. I must just ask you then, since you've brought her up, I was fascinated to see that Felicity Monroe is on your website. Now, a lot of people
Hmm.
use their pseudonym to, I want to say hide when I'm trying not to use that word, but I'm going to use
Yeah.
it, hide the fact that they narrate
Mm.
perhaps spicier things or, politically dubious things or whatever it is. I take it that's not something that's been an issue for you or something you were worried about?
Well, it's interesting. So it's a kind of a mixed bag as to how that happened. So at first, my first book with Audible to this day, I think might be the spiciest thing I've ever narrated. um, and so it was a let's say a rough riding entry into out of my Audible relationship. But so that was fun for me. But I at that up until that point, most of my work had been in YA or younger, like in their younger 20s. And so I was like, well, I'm a very sex positive person, and I don't believe it is my choice for a parent to educate their child about sex. And so I thought, geez, if they say to their child, "Oh yeah, go to the library and yeah, you can listen to anything Erin's narrated," and they end up with like Hot Times on a Sunday night, I don't know why it would be Sunday, then then that's not my choice. Then all of a sudden I've made a choice for a parent. And so I asked Kat, I was like, "Can I use a different name?" She's like, "Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Everybody's got a pseudonym." And I was like, "Okay, great." And that then I just decided right off the bat that how I would delineate was anything that was listed as romance. So that means, as we know, there's closed door romances, sweet romances, where the most that happens is a kiss, right? There's a lot of feelings, and there might be even sexual feelings, but the only thing that actually happens in the book, or that we see, quote unquote, or hear, is a kiss. But if it's listed as romance, Felicity does it. And that goes all the way into dark romances. And so for me, it was easier to just delineate by full genre as opposed to, well, the sweets, well, I'll do. And then I'm going to decide at some point if it's not sweet and what genre, and put that in under Felicity. It was just easier for me. So honestly, it's a bit of me just making it easier on myself. And those choices felt easy. And I didn't have a website. I wasn't on social media until maybe 6 years ago. And I've been narrating for 14 years. And so I just, because work was just coming in, and for the first time in my life as a narrator, or as an actor, I didn't have to hustle more than sending an email every once in a blue moon, because I was always working with people, so I didn't even have to keep up with them. And there was very few, considerably less people in our industry at that point, so it was very easy to be in easy communication, and there was no need to publicize anything. And so I've tried to, and continue to try to grow with the times and with the industry, and that's changed. So I decided to go on social media, I was like, I can't handle having more than how many social medias can I have? Because I've learned a lot more, but I was an even worse Luddite at that time. And so I decided everything would go under Mooney Books. I would be, Felicity and Erin would be Mooney Books, and I would be out about the fact that, just like many authors, I would be out about the fact that I do things under different nom de vox or nom de plume, right? And so I decided that, and then I recognized that the romance community is its own community. It is, yes, there's crossover, but boy, romance fans and romance authors and narrators, it's its own beautiful world. And if I really wanted to be involved in that world, then I needed to break Felicity off and give her her own social media and give her her own page. But I decided, you know what? We're going to do it still all out in the open, because that's kind of like saying, I within myself hold all of these characters, because I do. Because if you changed the given circumstances of my life, I am all these characters because I play all these characters. And so there is a part of me that can play into the idea of being that super, super sexy, dark woman, and who can be the sweet romance woman who's off on her ranch falling in love with the local postman. And I can also be the YA and the middle grade kid who, is in gymnastics and playing with horses, just like I was as a kid. And so I feel like now I just did a photo shoot, and I'm gonna uh, update some of my website stuff and play within the promo realm a little bit more. And part of that is me trying to show I am the spectrum of the characters that I play. That's why I do what I do.
Do you know, I love that. Feels like a journey into awareness and acceptance, and I love that for you and for us. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing all of that. I have an odd question that doesn't fit into any other group, so I'm just going to ask it.
Awesome.
On your yoga website, it says
Mm.
you do chair yoga in Spanish and English. Do you speak Spanish?
No, I don't. So I speak like a 2 or 3 year old. Um, I spent a couple of months in Ecuador and taught English in a school, and the kids would get a kick out of me because I could only speak in present tense. And I would often have to find a way to speak about something using the vocabulary that I had. And that continues to be the way I am with Spanish. But that is, at the time when I worked for that organization, which was an NGO that helps with spinal and skeletal issues across the world. And they started a yoga program, and I helped develop that as a means to just get people moving and settle their nervous system to help with pain management. And one of the women that I approached to be part of that is a Spanish speaker. And so she does the Spanish ones, and I did the English ones.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Talk to us then about your coaching. And I'm going to start with my last question, which is, what do people come to you for? What's the thing that most
Yeah.
that initial contact moment?
Oh boy, yeah. As you know, all sorts of different contact points. I get everything from the hey, my friends say I have a good voice and I like books, to and my approach, actually, it's worth talking about. My approach with I often get a lot of those emails through my website, especially as I present myself on social media more. Um, and at first, I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely, we'll set up a coaching. And a lot of my work is, I have to come from a very value and morals based place, or I don't kind of feel aligned. And so what I recognized was what was happening is people were paying me for that first coaching, and I was spending 45 minutes telling them everything they would need to know before thinking about doing this work. So, how long the average person takes to really fundamentally make a living in it, how much, training is going to kind of cost, and how much equipment is going to cost, and how long it is taking to break in. And of course, in the last particularly 5 years, it's the competition in this field has gone up probably tenfold. And I recognized that what they were actually contacting me about, and this was me trying to set them up for expectation setting and for understanding how they might fit this into their world. Like, if you dedicate this time to it, how much time do you have? Don't quit your day job. Like, keep working your regular job until this requests you to switch over to the other job, and make sure you have financial backing for the in-between part, and so many things to consider when taking on a whole new profession. And what I recognized was that what they actually needed was resources. They needed to do a lot of that work on their own without paying me money, to go and take some acting classes, and to think about where they were coming from, and to look at, how do I want to fit this into my world? Do I want to take on a completely new profession? And so now I respond to those inquiries where people are non-actors, so not formally trained actors. And it is me letting them know, this is kind of what to expect. Know that it's a highly competitive profession, and here are a whole bunch of resources for group classes, Narrator's Roadmap, ACX University, and I list a whole. I tell them about Joel. I tell them about narrators.life, group classes. I suggest different ways that they can get acting training. And then I say, look at all of this stuff. I'm willing to work with you at any point along the way, but do this first. Save me and how much it costs you to work with me for when you've got some of that base, that self-learning that you've done. And then I'll take you wherever you are and at whatever point you need me to be. And that's felt a lot cleaner to me, because I feel like now the people who actually reach out after they've gone through those resources, they're a bit more, they kind of understand what they're getting into, and I didn't take that money from them. It's the worst business plan ever, but it fits within my morals and my value system a lot cleaner. And so now when I'll get people who are like, have done some of that self-learning, and they're ready to okay, now I want some performance coaching, some one-on-one performance coaching. Great. Now I want to start to work toward making demos. and whether or not they've bought the equipment yet. And I'm like, okay, great, we're going to start to gather those pieces. And while we're gathering those pieces, we're going to work on performance, and you're going to learn all these performance things. And then I also have people who are like 10 or 15 books in on, say, ACX, or working with independent authors, and they want to now start to approach producers, and they're not quite sure how to get to be part of the conversation. And that's what I call being like in these groups and part of the APA and PANA, and just how do they kind of take it up that little notch. And so that's when we again work toward demos, and we start to talk about, okay, so once you get those demos up, once you get your website tickety boo, and we talk about the different things that need to be on the website. I take every webinar offered by anybody so that I bring to my coaching students the kind of the through line from those webinars and workshops, because everybody says something a little different, and then people will take that as the only way, which I don't believe exists in art. And so what I do is I take everything and then look at what are they saying that's similar, and that's what I bring to my coaching students. And then we set them up. So then I go, okay, now you've got a good place to send producers. That's when you want to start engaging with producers, because now you're presenting yourself as someone who is ready, fundamentally does this, great time to start engaging. So at all sorts of kind of points along the way. And people who are already working with producers and just are feeling a little stuck, or like they're ready to get to the next point. I just worked with somebody she's 150 books in, and we were just working on, okay, I think there's a next level of subtlety you can bring to your work, and I think you can relax into your work a little bit more and find more specificity and do a little. That's how you get into the text, is actually if you relax into it a bit more. So it kind of it varies.
Love that. I'm hoping that because of this interview and all the other interviews you've done, obviously, and hopefully at some point this is going to be on the podcast once I catch up with all the conversations we've had here on Clubhouse, people are going to hear about you, and you are going to be inundated. I am predicting that. But up until now, has it mostly been word of mouth, people just coming through your website, or how have people found you, and how can they find you?
Yeah, so everything's been word of mouth. So I don't, outside of my my website, and saying on TikTok every once in a while, I'll do a narrator tip of the day. Outside of that, I don't advertise that I am coaching like on the regular, just because I'm a bit of a slow marketing person. I like things to kind of grow organically, and also because there has been so much shift in our industry in the last 5 to 6 years. I'm not trying to attract people who don't already have it on their radar to do this work, because it's hard. Because it's hard and it's not getting easier. So that's not about gatekeeping or making it so that I'm feeling scarcity. It's actually going, you know what, if this is already on your mind, and if this is already something that you want to do, the amount of self-motivation you need to have to do this as a profession is a lot. So if you don't have the self-motivation to start to Google and to start to look into things on your own, this is not any sort of solo entrepreneur. Artistic work is not the place you should be. So I kind of feel like people need to want to do it enough, or be curious enough to start to do their own, looking around, to then come and do that first email to me, and then I've got all those resources for them. So then they get more, and if they're like, yep, I've already done all that, then I'm like, great, here's my availability. Let's
Wonderful. What is your favorite thing to teach?
I love teaching script specificity and analysis. So I love helping people recognize that all their acting notes are in the script, that authors paint the page and they conduct. They are musicians, and they are visual artists, and they are writers, and they might not even know that. but that there is actually so much nuance within, especially the narration part. I love teaching helping people broaden their character choices and all of that. And I love doing that as well. But I really love when people unlock a script because it feels like that. And I've loved this about working with actors forever is the moment when they unlock it and they're right inside the script and I can feel it. Everything makes sense. It's the same thing as Shakespeare. You know, you can listen to a Shakespeare play and it can sound like another language. And then you can listen to a Shakespeare play and it brings you to your knees and, you know, weeping to your knees. And that's the difference between being inside the text and riding on the outside of it, I feel. So those are the moments. I had this moment with that same actor the other day who's 150 books in when she unlocked this one moment that she'd been kind of on top of and pushing through a little bit, like reaching toward her audience. And she settled into the text and just rode the text. And I was like, this is amazing. It's exciting to me.
That's wonderful. Can I ask if you could look back probably a long time, and I'm not going to say how many years, did you imagine this is how it would work out?
No, no, nothing.
No.
Nothing. Not a single thing. Other than I suppose I'm an actor, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that the taproot is still there.
That's lovely. That's lovely. I'm aware we've got 5 minutes left. So if anybody would like to come up and ask any questions, share any thoughts, now is your time because we will close when the questions finish. Erin, is there something you'd like to share that I haven't mentioned? I'm aware that your, Panna is huge. Have you got
Yeah.
any workshops coming up? Anything you want to talk about that I haven't thought to ask you?
No, just for the PANA stuff, just keep your eyes out, those of you who are members, and if you're not a member, maybe go check out what we're doing. We're really recognizing that we want to be able to provide opportunity both for free for membership. So essentially, like, what do you get for the cost of membership, and making sure that we're always offering at least 2 educational things free every semester, and that the panorama is free, and we've expanded that. It's happening today at 3 o'clock my time, 2 o'clock my time, 2 o'clock my time, so 5 o'clock, I want to say, East Coast time. I'm not sure. And that's the hope with PANA is that we've applied for NGO status. We're really hoping for that because that means we can get grants so that hopefully everything can be free at some point. But that's the hope. And so just to check those things out because those are things that have been changing at PANA as we're learning as a bunch of actors who are running an organization processes and how to do that. So things are growing there. So that's all I have for PANA.
Well, I'm done with all my questions, and I think I need a couple of minutes actually just to sort of process all the stuff that I've heard today because it's been incredible. Everybody's saying in the chat, I hope you get a chance to be able to read some of the lovely things people are saying about you. Barbara says the hour has flown by. Thank you very much for sharing your story. You're lovely and amazing. Anna has very kindly shared that the panorama is at 4 p.m. Eastern today, which is
Thank
1 p.m.
you.
And yes, no, thank you very much, Erin. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I'm going to close up the room if that's okay with you. I'm
Yes, I
really
look forward to
grateful.
seeing you. I hope I'll see you in LA at the end of February, beginning of March.
Sadly not.
Maybe?
I'm not at the Audis, no.
No,
It's
nuts.
it's that much further for me from
Oh,
this side of
yes.
the pond. And
Yeah.
it's, yeah, more than my jet-lagged brain can cope with. So,
Well, I hope we get a chance to be in person
indeed,
together
that
in the
would be
future. I know
lovely.
we will. I know we will.
Absolutely. If
Yeah.
not before, then APAC next year, I will hold out a hug for you. But thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. So thank you
Thank
very,
you for
very much
having me.
indeed. Today we talked to acting coach and narrator and all-round wonderful person, ErinMoon. My takeaways? I pride myself in finding out what we don't already know, and I am so glad that we got to know Erin today. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you very much to everybody who listened in today. Thank you for the comments in the chat. Thank you very much to everybody who stopped long enough to say how lovely it is, and hopefully to lots of people who are listening back on the replay, because this really was an incredible hour. Erin, I'm thrilled that you shared your story with us and that we got to know you better. I
Thank
truly
you.
feel privileged. No, thank you. Yes, thank you very much, everybody. And let's go out and be our favourite selves. Bye bye.